Welcome to Be Bold Branding, where we discuss the power of differentiating yourself through your own unique story and standout personal brand. Today, we're talking with someone who focuses on the most important part of business, communication. It's a word we toss around a lot, but I can tell you that a lot of times it just isn't done correctly. And today we're going to learn more about that. I'm Tanya Eberhardt, founder of BrandFace. We help business stars differentiate themselves, and we do that through personal branding.
And I'm Michael Carr. I'm the COO of BrandFace. I was actually a client before I became a partner in the company, and we're the only comprehensive personal brand building system across the globe. We do Be Bold podcast to help people, business owners, get the fear out of putting themselves out there. We've got a great guest for you here today to help you take the fear out of putting yourself out there in your business.
Stormie Andrews is a licensed practitioner of neuro-linguistic programming and creator of the world's best buyer persona system, among many other things, which we're going to talk about today. His passion is helping business owners, C-level executives, marketing managers, and anyone looking to improve how they communicate in a digital world. Welcome to the program, Stormy.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I am so excited to be here with the two of you.
Well, we appreciate it, and we're excited as well.
We're very interesting what you do. And so we're going to dig into this, but we like to find out, we're all about personal branding. So we like the personal side of things with people. And so we like to start off with our guests. Tell us how you got started in your profession. Like, what was your inspiration? My
profession and this, the world's best buyer persona system. I like to say I've been building the world's best buyer persona system since I was since I was a youngster in third grade, actually. My dad worked for the government. And myself and my parents found ourselves in a situation that we moved a lot. Even though he was civil service, it wasn't until my 11th and 12th grade year in high school that I experienced what it was like to attend the same school 2 years in a row.
Wow.
Sometimes I'd go to 2 or 3 schools during the same school year. So lots and lots of moving. And as a youngster moving into a wide variety of communities all over the country, I had scenarios to where some neighborhoods valued education, some neighborhoods valued toughness. So there was a wide variety of social, economic conditions that put me in a situation that I needed to quickly gauge what scenario I was in if I wanted to not just survive, but thrive within that community. So I got lots of at-bats, being able to figure out the community I was in, blend into that community. And when that trajectory took me into sales, one of the things that I discovered was wherever I worked in sales, I would quickly rise to the top and become the number one salesperson with that industry. And it wasn't because of any special training. It was because I had this unique ability to get into rapport with people faster than others, because I spent a lot of time learning instinctively what made people tick, and I enjoyed it. I liked it. And then I've been able to turn that into a process as we moved into this digital space. How do we get to these digital assets, these digital employees to communicate more effectively?
That's a good way of putting it. Digital employees, because it really is. It's like it's like a soldier for you, right?
That's the way we've said it before. And we're definitely going to talk about that. But before we do, I got to say, the education in people is the most incredible education you can ever get. And you got that at such a young age. I mean, you had to learn to adapt very quickly. And then sometimes a minute you adapted up, now you're replanted somewhere else and readapting again. And that is probably the greatest education a human being could get. I know it was tough on you back then, but you're probably thankful now that, that you weathered through all of that. And I got to ask, do you have siblings? And where are you in the pecking order?
So I am the youngest. And by this time, my siblings, they didn't have to experience this. It was a time frame where my dad wanted to improve his retirement position, and being the youngest, and there was a 10-year age gap between me and the second youngest. When they decided to go on this path, the others were able to stay in California. So it was just my mom, my dad, myself moving back east, down south, West Coast, just all over the place.
Wow. So you did that as an only child, made you even that much more resilient. That's great.
It sure
I'm interested in that. So it's this Fantastic.
Yeah, Michael always says a pecking order and how someone grows up, just kind of formulates who they become as an adult a lot of times. And he's right. You talk about learning to communicate in any environment. We're very much like that too. I grew up appreciating and loving having conversations with older people. So when we were around a lot of older people, other kids would be playing with kids and I would be sitting there talking to the 60, 70, 80-year-olds. And it was such a joy because and then I grew up going to a nursing home every Sunday throughout my life. So I understand and so appreciate how blessed I was to be able to have those opportunities to be around so many different people. Michael was always very close to his grandparents. So that age gap and the wisdom gap means a lot. And I think, one of the things we've always said about one of the greatest skill sets as a salesperson, and that any salesperson can have, is adaptation. Being able to adapt to your surroundings. You certainly did that. Did that play into your buyer persona system? I'm sure it did.
Absolutely. As I mentioned earlier, I went into sales and I had a great sales career. And it wasn't until I discovered the world of NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, that I started to understand the whys. And as I started to understand the whys, I became more enthralled in the topic. And that's when I did the deep dive in the world of NLP. And prior to starting Yoka Local, my digital marketing agency, I had a consultancy of teaching salespeople how to sell better, but based on communication, not based on tricky or fancy sales techniques. It was all about getting them to know, like, and trust you. And the best way you can do that is about it's about getting into rapport, right? You got to give them a reason to want to trust you, and you got to be trustworthy, right? So that was the scenario that was very, very passionate, that I was passionate about. But then as the world started going digital, one of the things that I noticed was these digital assets, for the most part, are pretty lousy communicators. It's typically communicating. There's very little energy and effort spent on figuring out who your ideal prospect is, what you want to say to them, what's important to them, what struggles, what pain points are they experiencing that you get to bring to the table. It's just been this scenario of, let me throw all this stuff about me, put it in this digital sphere, and hopefully something grabs your attention and you would want to reach out to me. And I think of that approach as no different than the person that we've all ran into, right? That person that every time you see them, they want you to get involved with this or get involved, buy this. It's all about them, right? Whatever they have. And we tend to avoid those individuals like the plague. Well, it's no different than your digital assets. And they're not going to change unless you are in the position to change them, to give your digital assets the training that they need to deliver your message to the benefit of your audience, not yourself.
Yeah, I love that.
Very true. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, let's dig into that a little bit. Do you want to talk about buyer persona? Like, talk to us about that.
Yeah. So, the concept of a buyer persona has been around for forever, right? It's been around since marketing's been around, but there's been this fundamental disconnect where people who've built buyer personas that are listening to this or watching this show right now are saying, I've done buyer personas back in the 1970s and they did no good. Well, and I agree with you. They did no good because the buyer personas historically have been about collecting lots of demographic data about who your ideal client is, and then using that demographic to help that demographic data to help collect, to help figure out in your messaging. The problem is demographics don't have emotions, and demographics don't make decisions. Demographics are nothing more than that. They're just demographics, right? Who cares? If I were to share with you right now that my next door neighbor is 47 years old, drives a minivan, 2.3 kids, making $150,000 a year, and so on and so on and so on, how is that going to help you connect with that person? It's not. It's just demographic data. And I remember when I built my first buyer persona, I was super excited. And it was like this false, it was this false, well, fool's gold. That's what it was. It was fool's gold because when I built the first one, I was discovered to it. I had this beautiful document and I thought it was going to make a world of difference in regards to my marketing campaigns when I was in the home building industry. And it looked great when I was sitting in the board meeting. But when push came to shove, once I showed it off to the rest of my colleagues. It sat on a shelf, it collected dust, and it had no value whatsoever. It didn't help the sales team, didn't help the marketing team, it didn't help anyone. But it was, except me, when I was in the marketing room, wanting to show people how smart I was, right? That's historically, that's been the problem. And in reality, people are emotional creatures, right? When it comes to the world of branding, right? You want your clients to connect with their audience on an emotional level. That's where it's powerful. Is that a fair statement?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So when it comes to buyer personas, how can you connect with someone on an emotional level if you spent no time, energy, and effort figuring out what those emotions are? So what this system does is it gives you a roadmap. It gives you a path to where you can start asking insightful questions of some of your ideal clients. But if you don't have access to those clients, it guides you through a process to help you recall what some of those elements are. So for instance, what are their triggering events? Why would someone be looking for your goods and services now? Why not 6 months ago? Why not 6 years from now? What are some possible triggering events? Understanding that can have a profound impact on your messaging, but also understanding the noise that they're seeing in the marketplace. It's said today that there's so much noise out there. We're bombarded with advertising and messaging and all these things that are just engulfing our senses. Well, if you spend time figuring out what is some of the noise, what are they seeing as it pertains to what you bring, what value you bring to the world, what else are they seeing? What are they being told by their friends and family and colleagues? And what are they even doing about it? Are they looking for a solution? Does your message help you gather trust? And does it help put you in a position to where you're gaining more respect with your ideal prospects by putting you in a position of authority, right? Those are some elements that if you can figure out what those elements are and put a narrative together in regards to those narratives, it helps become this foundational element in regards to all of your marketing messaging. So if you're putting a messaging out on your website or any social media platform, it's messaging that's designed to resonate and attract the person and the people you want to do business with, while at the same time simultaneously repelling the people that shouldn't be part of your world. And that's okay. Oftentimes when people say everyone needs to be a part of my world, no, everyone doesn't, right? So what if there was a way to attract the people you want to do business with, the people you want to influence, and while simultaneously repelling the others? And that's what the system's all about. But what it also does that's unique is it takes into account the buyer's journey. You see, when someone has a pain or they're struggling for a solution, a very simplistic buyer's journey is someone who's in the awareness stage. They're aware that they have a pain, they've got a problem, and they're looking for solutions. They just don't know what the potential solutions are. So now they start this research stage. Well, and then they move to the consideration stage. They found different paths that they can take, and they're considering which path. Then we get to the decision stage. They've pretty much determined the path that they're going to take. It's just a matter of making that decision and moving forward. Well, that same prospect in the awareness, consideration, and decision stage may have different questions, different concerns, different issues, different emotions. Well, what if there was a way to document that so you can have messaging and resources for that same person, regardless what stage they're in? This way, someone can become attracted to your brand wherever they're at in the buyer's journey, and you get to help them along their path. And as you're helping them along the path, you become more trusted. You have more respect because you're helping them along their journey, thinking about them and not yourself. Did that make sense? Did that answer your question, or did I go off into a la la land?
No, you did
hit
great.
The target.
Yeah, you hit the target, because it is so important. And also, it sounds to me like the system can help roadmap for those people who are just now learning about funneling or just now learning about how to build that rapport in certain steps. I came from the automobile industry. I grew up in it. My dad was a car dealer all my life. I didn't really want to be a car dealer. I loved the industry, so I became a car auctioneer, so I could still be around it. But, they have a lot of what you're talking about, figuring that persona in 10 seconds, 15 seconds, a minute to 10 minutes to 15 minutes to an hour to 2 hours to 3 hours till you get that person that doesn't want to talk to a salesperson. I just want to look. and now they're in finance signing up for a brand new car, right?
Right.
And, you know, and there are those steps like that that are very important for the listeners to, you know, and if it's in real estate, you know, that time frame could be months or maybe even years that you're building that same rapport, because it's such a bigger asset and a slower moving asset.
You know, it's funny that you brought that up, is because one of the things that we've discovered within, not only within my agency, because we use the world's best buyer persona system for our clients, but the feedback that I've gotten from individuals that are in the world of sales, applying the world's best buyer persona system to whatever else they're doing, is a overwhelming consensus is that it helps speeds up the sales process. And helps speeds up the sales process because it helps them get into a position of trust and rapport much faster. It helps put them in a position to where their ideal clients, fall into a situation where they feel like they know, they like, and they trust them much faster. Mm-hmm. And the sales process speed up, and it speeds up for the benefit of your prospect. And then you're the recipient of those benefits.
Yes. Yeah. And I can see that. I really can see that, like being in the real estate business, I can see that how important that is. And I know for a fact that we've got clients that are like, oh, I'm not going to buy anything right now because there's a crash coming. And then you were like, what crash? Like where? Like, because, you know, they base it on some distant memory and not really in where we are financially right now. And they don't understand, they haven't been in it long enough to realize that even if you buy a property and it crashes and you hold that property will be worth a lot more money down the road, because it is a long game. And so to be able to speed that process up, for it, you're really helping that buyer that really wants to own that house right now, really doesn't need to rent for the next 5 years, because they are waiting on this impending doom that none of us could predict even if it was coming, right? And
absolutely,
it's very beneficial in the real estate world to speed that process up in a world right now where it's moving like that. So that's true. That's really good, really valuable stuff.
So I have an important question for you, Stormy. I've always thought this for years. So I want to see if I'm right about this. So we did a lot of research, you know, when we first started our company, to talk about what are the pain points out there, where is the need, and where's the gap, and all of those things. And I said, you know, I've been dealing in sales my whole life. I started selling vacuum cleaners door to door when I was paying my way through college. And then that led to the media world. And I spent 18 years there. Then I opened up my own agency and then became BrandFace. So I always said, you know, that there are only about 8 to 10 pain points for any particular buyer. And if you know what those main pain points are, now there are little ones that, you know, splinter off from those main 8 to 10. Would you say that is correct, or would you find there are less or more?
Yeah, for any industry, that ties right into one of the things that I do when organizations bring me in and I do consulting. I have found that I've done this across hundreds, if not thousands, of organizations. There's only 20 questions that are asked over and over and over again. And those 20 questions often refer back to a limited number of pain points. So I agree with your numbers. I haven't broken it down into pain points, but I've challenged organizations to prove me wrong, that the vast majority of the questions, 80% of the questions, that's the old 80-20 rule, 20%, or let me back up. Those 20 questions account for 80% of all the questions you're being asked.
Right.
And which leads to the same pain point. You know, we did this. Let me give you an example here. In some industries, it's less. We did some marketing and some consulting for the LASIK industry. And, you know, LASIK is eye surgery, right? And when we looked at some LASIK websites, there was all sorts of just stuff, all sorts of noise all over the website. In reality, there's only two pain points as it pertains to that industry. And that is it safe? Am I going to be blind after this operation, right? That's a big concern. And the other one is price. It's one or the other, sometime both. But if I can get through this and I'm confident that I'm not, you know, I mean, the concept of a laser being shot in your eye is a pretty, incredible.
I had it done. I know.
Right? I haven't had it for that reason.
So when you had it, which one of the two? Was it safety or price, or a combination of both?
It was safety for me. It was. I
Yeah.
just wanted to make sure that, it's awesome to be ahead of the curve on a lot of things. You don't want to be too ahead of the curve on some things. So I don't want to come out blindly ahead of the curve, but but no, it was safety for me for sure.
Yeah, and that leads right exactly what you said. There are typically very, very few concerns. Understanding those, having the ability of answering those, and more importantly, showing that you empathize with the pain. Answering them is one thing, but being able to have empathy is a totally different scenario. And
agree.
it's difficult to do if you haven't spent the time, energy, and effort documenting those items so you can put a strategy together, as it pertains to what you've documented. So I agree with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just kept running into that over and over again. And it's like, well, that's this pain point and that's this pain point, and we've already covered all of those. But yeah, there are a lot of questions, but they all lead back to the same, the same water, right? It all leads back to the
Absolutely.
same thing.
Yeah. All right, we're gonna spin a little bit here and take in a little different direction, because you clearly have an incredible brand. We love the name, and clearly you've built that reputation up. So we're going to ask you some questions about that, if that's all right with you. 5 important questions about your personal brand. All right.
Okay.
And the first one, what do you think sets Yokel Local apart from all the others that do the same thing you do?
It's interesting because there was a shift at Yokel Local when COVID hit. So, so to address that sets us apart. When COVID hit, and I just want to share this story, the obvious component that sets Yokel Local apart is the world's best buyer persona system. We created the system. We have agencies all over the world that are using it, that it's making an incredible difference in the marketing industry. So that's huge, right? That's a good thing to have. But when our agency is located here in Las Vegas, and we had a high concentration of Las Vegas-based businesses when COVID hit. And when Las Vegas shut down, we were like, uh-oh, because in the course of a week, it was almost comical, because every time the phone rang, we knew it was someone canceling or someone pausing their services. Mm-hmm. So we had a significant revenue drop that if that were to continue for an extended period of time, Yokel Local wouldn't exist anymore. So we went to the world's best buyer persona and we looked at, okay, what's changed? Let's build out a persona based on the current market conditions. And there was this transition in the space, and it allowed us to get back to an area to where, in relatively short order, to where we're not bleeding revenue each month, because we didn't want to lay off any employees. So we got to that area. And we knew that wasn't necessarily, or we felt that wasn't necessarily going to be a long-term scenario. It was a persona that was built for where the world was at that particular period of time. Mm-hmm. Within the last 2 months, we rebuilt our buyer persona again, looking at what are we going to do moving forward, looking at what areas, as we shift it, what areas have we had the greatest success, what areas, who do we want to attract and who do we want to repel moving forward from 2022 and beyond. And that's the area, that Yokel Local has faced. When we looked at the space during COVID, we found that we had pretty good success across a wide variety of industries, but the legal space, we've had an incredible amount of success. So we decided to go deep on that persona. Let's just attract law firms that we know we can get them an ROI very, very quickly, and everyone's happy, right? Let's go deep in that space. So that's the area that Yokel Local has gone down, and it is going down, which leads me in a world where I get to travel the world and talk about the world's best buyer persona system. So it's, which is pretty awesome, because myself and my fiance, we just travel. I speak for an organization. I get to share with them some incredible information. Maybe I'm consulting or training, but I get to do what I'm most passionate about, and that's traveling. Now, with that being said, I went off on this tangent. I don't know if I answered your question.
You did.
Because I had so much fun with it.
Yeah.
No, you sure did. Well, first off, it was a buyer persona, right? The system
right.
that you've got. That's definitely a differentiator.
Yeah.
But I also like the fact that you shifted with the certain times. And that shift doesn't necessarily mean a forever shift. We should all in business be looking at the landscape in which we are tilling. We're all farmers. We're all tilling the ground, and you got to pay attention to the weather. You got to pay attention to growth, and you got to pay attention to weeds and everything that grows up around it. And we're constantly having to readjust those things. And so, no, you definitely answered it, and I love it. That's a good one.
And to pile onto that, Local, we have more employees and we're more profitable and more revenue than we've ever had, since the, prior to Corona and all these other things that are happening. And we have to attribute that to being able to shift, but using that world's best buyer persona system as the catalyst to allow us to make better decisions.
Perfect. Great answer. Rolls into the next question. Who exactly do you serve? In other words, who are your ideal customers? And you did lean into that for a little bit.
I did lean into that, and that's law firms. What we have found in some industries, we have to convince them, prior to, we got to convince the importance of marketing and prominence and all this other stuff. And we're just at a place to where that's not what we do. We want individuals that understand that this is important, and it just comes down to facts and figures. Is what you're doing profitable or not? Right? The legal space is a no nonsense space. It's profitable. It's not. We can measure the ROI immediately, and we can deliver results very quickly. And we can put systems and processes and structure in place, which typically they don't have, which is a huge differentiator for us in this particular space. So that's who our ideal client is. It's law firms primarily in the space of dealing in the B2C space, the law firm to consumers, more so than litigation attorneys or the B2B space. And that's the area that is the ideal client for Local as an entity.
I love it. And you actually almost answered 3, and you didn't even know it. How do you serve those, that ideal customer?
It's speed, right? It's a scenario, what we've done a buyer persona, right? And here's what we have found in that particular space. In that space, they don't care about fancy numbers. Hey, let me show you how many people came to your website. And let me show you all these vanity metrics. They don't care. It comes down to, did I make money? Did I not? And if I made money, if you can show that we made $8 for every dollar we put into this, let's put another $1 into it and see if we can make $16 for those $2. If you're wanting to scale, then, for law firms that want to scale their business, well, then we're a great fit because we put those metrics in place. It either works or it doesn't. We don't have to sit there forever, a year down the road to figure out this thing didn't work. It's pretty fast. And we've got systems and processes in place for most areas of practice to where we've gotten pretty good at it.
Yep.
Love it.
Okay. This one is, what qualifies you to serve your ideal customers?
So one, I guess having a track record is not a bad thing, right? So having a track record, having case studies, that's not bad. The being able that I wrote the book on the world's best buyer persona system. It's the system that I created. As a matter of fact, it's been so impactful. For 2021 and 2022, Intercon named me a top 50 tech visionary, and that's because of the system. I'm
Congratulations.
Yes, fantastic.
Thank you. So that was pretty awesome. And I'm a frequent contributor to Forbes, and I write on buyer personas. So Forbes, they trust me with their millions of audience. And then even our agency, there's another monstrosity of a company that's out there called HubSpot. And HubSpot has different tiers of agencies, and we're the first and only HubSpot agency that has achieved platinum status within the state of Nevada. And I'm the only HubSpot trainer within the state of Nevada. So even though our clients are everywhere, I've got some accolades that stand on their own, and it's easy to verify. A lot of people can say things about me or can say things about themselves, excuse me, but I've got a pretty unique name. It's Stormy with an IE, Stormie Andrews. I welcome people. Go online, check me out, see what others have said about me, see what kind of stuff I have out there. You can see the good, the bad, the ugly, but the only reason I'm telling you to go check it out because there's a lot more good. So it's easy to check me out. And, my book, The World's Best Buyer Persona System, when it was released in July, it was an Amazon New Releases bestseller. My Audible, which had just come out October 30th, has achieved #1 New Releases bestseller status. So apparently there's some good information that is slowly but surely taking the marketing world by storm.
By storm.
There it is, right?
I love it. I love it. Well, and then this is going to be the easiest question that we ask out of all of it, especially for a man like yourself. How does it make your client's life better?
Easy question. Well, I don't know. No, just kidding. He said easy question. Usually, like I said, what we've realized, remember, Tanya, when it goes to the question, there's only 4 or 5 concerns. I gave you the LASIK. I think you said seven to 8 concerns, correct?
Yeah, it's anywhere around in there's good.
There's 7 or 8, right? LASIK had 2.
There aren't that many main concerns.
Right.
Absolutely. For ours, it's really easy. When it comes to law firms, is this going to be profitable? And when am I going to get there?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And they're okay. Is this going to be a profitable endeavor in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 10 years? And they're typically not okay with the longer, period. But if we can paint out how we're going to do it and then do it, and then in many cases exceed what we said we're going to do, it turns out to be a pretty cool process that we can help that firm scale. And it also scales Yoko at the same time. It becomes this synergistic relationship where it works well for both parties involved.
Great answers. Great answers.
We're not only going to pick up that book, we're going to teach some of those principles to our clients. So
awesome.
Pick it up, guys, on Amazon and Audible, now Audible. So tell us, Stormy, how can prospects reach you if they have questions or want to touch base and want to become a client?
So I've got a super tool for you because maybe you want to know more. One, if you want to get a hold of me, my company is Yoko. I have my own website, Stormie Andrews, but I can give you a million websites, right? But I'm a person that's big into helping organizations outsmart. And that's something I haven't shared with you, but what I've also discovered as it pertains to my persona is when they approach me, the conversation typically goes something like this. Like, Stormy, I want to outsell or I want to outgrow. Is that a fair statement? I want to outsell or I want to outgrow. And my pushback is you've got 2 ways of doing it. You can either outspin, that's one way, and then there's still no guarantee if you outspin, but there's many people out there that will help you outspin. That's the easy route. But the preferred route is outsmart. You see, if you can outsmart the competitors, and really it's a universal thing. If you outsmart, it's easier, much easier to outsell. It's much easier to outgrow, but we just have to get back to first principles. Let's figure out how to outsmart. So with that being said, if people want more information from me, I have a website called outsmarttools.com because I'm the guy that helps you outsmart. And on that site, it gives you links to Yoko. It gives you a link to Amazon and Audible, and if you wanted to buy this stuff. But another tool that it has, which is a totally free tool, it's my success wheel. And what it is it helps you it helps you self-identify, help you self-audit your strengths, your weaknesses as it pertains to what you're doing in regards to marketing. And it helps you identify what you should be focused on, what you shouldn't be focused on, where you should be putting your time, energy, and effort, and where you shouldn't. And just that alone could be incredible as it pertains to your organization. So you want to know more about me, go to outsmarttools.com. It's a simple page that gives you links to everything that you can find about me.
That's great.
We've had such a pleasure having you on the show. We have learned a lot. We enjoyed the conversation. So thank you, Stormy.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. It was a blast being here with branding experts as yourself. This was awesome.
Okay, guys. So if you have questions about your brand or want to learn more about us, go to discussyourbrand.com and schedule a session. Let's talk about how you get where you deserve to be.
Yep. And folks, listen, we do it for prosperity. When we say prosperity, we're not just talking about money. That's part of it, but we're talking about a full 360 of the abundant life. We truly wish for every one of you guys. We know here at BrandFace, prosperity favors the bold. So we say be bold, folks, especially with your brand. And thank you, Ms. Tanya. And thank you, Mr. Stormy. We appreciate what we went today.
Thank you.
All right, guys, we'll see you next time on Be Bold Branding.
Brought to you by BrandFace, the only comprehensive personal brand building system across the globe.